right, Ellis Cinema back, created by she, her. How we doing out there? Good, great, grand, and wonderful. The fucking marathon continues. The worst podcast in the history of podcasts keeps broadcasting. I don't know why. I don't know why anymore. Because the people that do listen, should I start a Patreon? Would you give me $2 a month? Should I start? This is time consuming for me, gang. This is very time consuming for me. And it's the worst podcast. The content stinks. The quality stinks. Everything about it stinks. I don't even know why I continue to do it, except for the fucking one DM I get every 9 months. That's not true. You guys are very connected with me, and I appreciate that and everything. It's just, I don't know. You get to the point. I have gotten to the point a couple of times where I may just be done with movies for a while. Like, I may need a break from movies in my life. I've watched so many movies year in and year out that I'm just, you know what? It's not the movies. It's just the fact that I got to come on this fucking microphone and entertain no one. As you see on your screen, your dial, however you are choosing to join me today, I apologize. Robocop. Yes, it has been one that I've been wanting to do, and I just figured that I would continue with the Arrow video trend, even though this one was released a while back now. I think they're doing a 4K release. Could be wrong. Probably am. But Robocop is, since my childhood, just a staple of filmmaking for me. A base when I started watching films. Robocop, to this day, I still think is very relevant. To this day, I think it still works. To this day, I think the satire behind it is still razor sharp. I still think that the effects in this, for the most part, okay, not some with the bigger. The bigger Robocop of the two. What is it? It's called Ed 209, ED 209. Yeah, so some of those sequences are a little rough to watch when you have the 2K restoration. Is this a 2K restoration, a 4K restoration? Doesn't say. I'm garbage. But, these movies were not meant to be watched on a 4K TV, 4K Blu-ray player. Some of these movies. I'm not saying that you can't go back and you can't remaster some of the classics. It's just when it comes to the horror, I feel specific. And it's a very bloody movie. Not that, I guess it's a horror film. It's part horror, science fiction, satire. There's drama, action. There's a lot going on in Robocop, which, I'm going to talk more about Arrow's release of it than I am the film, because if you haven't seen Robocop yet, just turn this off right now and watch fucking Robocop. If you have seen Robocop, is there anything that I'm really going to say that is going to enlighten you? Probably not. This is one of those ones, if it wasn't released by Arrow Video, in my head, I would want to do it because I love the movie so much. But it's the same reason why I kind of eased off doing Marvel films. Just because there's enough criticism out there. You don't need me talking about it. Robocop, if you look at the last 8, 9, 10 films that I've done for the show, most of you have never heard of them. So, and I kind of like that. Like, if we're talking in terms of doing the show, I kind of like knowing that I'm bringing you something that you have never heard of in your entire life. At least the majority of the audience that listens. I know there's quite a few of you that listen that are cinephiles, and you're right there with me every step of the way. In fact, some of the ones that I'm doing that I've never seen before, you've seen before me, so, whatever. But, I kind of... Do I really want to talk about Robocop? I do. But isn't there 15 million people that have already done it? Shit, I just guested on a show for Robocop 3-4 months ago. And you want to know what's fucked up is, I was telling Kyle, I have had doing Robocop in mind ever since the release, ever since Arrow Video's release of the director's cut and the theatrical cut. And it just, for whatever reason, I didn't pull the trigger on it. And the only reason, outside of continuing with the Arrow video release, the only reason outside of it that I went forward with it is because of how much fun I had on I Know Movies and You Don't with your host, Kyle Bruhl. Kyle's been on my show a few times, but that conversation was so good, and he is so enlightening. He never fails, depending the movie, but more often than not, he never fails with providing me a new perspective on a film, or a new perspective on perhaps just even a scene, and wouldn't you know it, he did it to me with this one. He basically said, he's like, look at it this way, and I'm not going to spoil you for it. Go over to his podcast and listen to our episode. But basically, the ending isn't as happy as perhaps we were led to believe. And now, when you're watching it, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, let's be honest, you're seeing the blood in the guts. You're seeing a man get shot in the dick. You're seeing a man's skin melting away from him. Like, come on, you know what I'm saying? So you're not seeing the subtext ever. Most of the time when you're young, you're not seeing the subtext. And some of the things that we talked about on his show, I'm a dumb person, and I would say I didn't consider about 25% of some of the things that he brought up. Most specific. Or specifically, the ending, and it's not this wine and roses that we have known it to be. So, check that episode out. But that's why I ultimately went ahead with it, because I was just like, this. I've had so much fun. This has to continue. So here we are. Robocop starring Peter Weller plays the Robocop himself. Some of the stories that you will find on the bonus features about the plight of wearing that fucking suit wasn't great. In fact, I believe he at one point Peter Weller quit the production because it was too much for him. But this is the old school filmmaking, baby. Old school Hollywood, where if you don't like it, lump it, because I'm something and you're nothing. We'll find somebody else to put on the suit. And actually, I think they did find somebody to put on the suit, but it didn't work because it was molded for Peter Weller's body. So they ultimately, the director, Paul Verhoeven, and Peter Weller had to kiss and make up and just make it work. And I mean, for those of you that have seen and love RoboCop, can you really picture anybody else besides Peter Weller in that suit? Something about, I mean, those high cheekbones and that jawline, I cannot picture anyone besides Peter Weller in that suit. Peter Weller, Nancy Allen, Daniel O'Herlihy, Ronny Cox, Kurtwood Smith, Miguel Ferrer, hateable. Miguel Ferrer is just fucking goddamn hateable, but in the best of ways, of course. Ronny Cox, also hateable. Nancy Allen, I thought, her character alone is ahead of its time. She is Murphy. RoboCop is Murphy. Murphy is Peter. RoboCop is Murphy. Murphy is Peter Weller. Nancy Allen is his partner, and we do not. I feel like even now, to a certain extent, we almost we still kind of I don't want to say a damsel in distress. That would be unfair. Like Anne, so Nancy Allen plays Anne. She just does her job, and there's so many brilliant aspects of this script. And I'm not going to even bother trying to touch all points on it. But I do want to point out a couple of things. There's no romantic interest between her and Murphy, and the way that it's written, it works perfectly. And there is never once in this, which I found to be very fascinating for a movie out of the 80s, and just the, Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner, who wrote the film, I don't know if they realized how ahead of their time they were in creating just a strong woman. It's no bullshit. She goes out, she does her job. It's just not your traditional female character, especially with a film that is coming out in that time. And in fact, you could make the arguments in a lot of ways that the 60s, 70s, and 80s in terms of toxic masculinity were, kind of the worst. We had very redundant characters in those decades, And to see a character like Anne perfectly portrayed by Nancy, it just didn't exist, gang. And like I said, for a second time, it doesn't exist a whole lot. Now, it does. More so than it did then. There's no question of that. More so than it did then. But even now, you kind of got to search for a character like Anne in Robocop. And the unfortunate part is I wish I could use Anne as like a, if I was going to sit down and watch a movie with a girl where she's like, Robocop, what's that? Let's put that on. I would definitely be like, oh, it's got a great female character. She's no bullshit, kick-ass. Spinning my web of bullshit just so I can see the look on her face when she sees the melting man. Or did Robocop shoot that guy in the dick? He certainly did. What else doesn't usually exist? The size of the cast and everybody being awesome. Everybody being awesome. Like, I don't think people really know how hard it is to get. It's almost like if you're into the video games, if you stacked your Madden team with a bunch of, but there's still restrictions on it, like you couldn't do all A+ players, but like more like a B+ across the board. That's kind of what everybody was. Like you have Paul McCrane, Ray Wise, from Twin Peaks. You got Leon Nash, Jesse D. Goins, Calvin Young, not Leon Nash, but Ray Wise plays Leon Nash. You have Paul McCrane, you have Ray Wise, Jesse D. Goins, Calvin Young, and they're part of Kurtwood Smith. Who's Kurtwood Smith? He's Red from that 70s show. Very rarely do you get a Jaws-type chemistry. Very rarely. In fact, like, sometimes I will even notice it. Not to say that the movie is terrible because the chemistry isn't there. Like if you have Leo and Tom on screen, Tom Hardy, it's whatever, right? But I think in terms of like Jaws, you can feel how good their chemistry is working, even though they hated each other on set. In this, no exception. Like, even though, and that's another very interesting thing that we discussed on Kyle's podcast, is even though they are very stereotypical villains, and in fact, almost like I could see some of the woke among us definitely calling bullshit, because you have a bald white guy, you have a black man laughing like a hyena, you have a very greasy Ray Wise. Like, it is just a very, when you see the band of villains, you're just like, of course they're the villains. And yet somehow the script is so effective that you remember every villain. I can't stress this enough, gang. That doesn't happen often. Like, you are remembering the fourth and fifth fiddle in the villain gang. You know what I'm saying? Like, that hyena laugh, to this day, we're talking 30, 40 years. To this day, I still can, like, I can hear that sound. I can hear that laugh. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. I just think a movie like Robocop that is still relevant these days, and still, like I said, with the exception of the corporate villain, EDO, well, I guess you could say the corporate villain are the CEOs, because that's one of the brilliant parts about the script, is just how predatory the corporation is, and infusing these machines into the Detroit Police Department and all, police departments across the world, across the country. And, it's very, you are hard pressed to see movies that will still work, movies that are like this, that are as crazy as, because this movie in a lot of ways is batshit insane, right? Usually, more often than not, gang, batshit insane movies from 30, 40, 50 years ago don't always play all that well, when you go back and watch them, many, many, many years later. And I think I was telling, maybe it was Kyle on his show, or maybe just some random fucking person, but just how timeless Robocop is. And it feels so weird to say that, given the content that is within it. I mean, the director's cut is about as brutal with the gore as you can possibly get. Before Murphy becomes Robocop, the way that he is shredded by the villains it's still tough to watch, Now, I've seen it so many times now I'm like, oh, cool. But I remember the first few times I've watched it, like, I'm rewinding it and going, holy fuck, man, this is crazy. This is fucking crazy. So, especially, like, even the lead up to that, Kurtwood Smith. The people that have seen the movie know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I guess that was the big point that I wanted to drive home with this one, is one, the Arrow Videos release is about, I don't know if it's possible to fit more bonus features on a disc than they did with RoboCop. Like, don't get me wrong, most of the time they're bonus features for the films. There's a shit ton for RoboCop. In fact, I think I made it through all of them but one. Like, there was just so much that I couldn't... It was an impossibility, well, mainly because my plate is always overflowing with shit, but we'll get into the bonus features here momentarily. So again, just wanted to say, written by Edward Neumeier and Michael Meyer, directed by the always graphic Paul Verhoeven, starring Peter Weller, Nancy Allen, Daniel O'Herlihy, Ronny Cox, Kurtwood Smith, Miguel Ferrer, and more. Cinematographer by Jost Vacano, and especially like when you have such a big special effects piece like this, you got to make sure your cinematographer is top notch, and he did not fail us, gang. He did not fail us. All right, so what is this fucking... What is that? Yeah, it was a 4K restoration. So this is a 2-disc set of RoboCop via Arrow. You got an archive commentary with director Paul Verhoeven, executive producer John Davidson, and co-writer Ed Neumeier, originally recorded for the theatrical cut and re-edited in 2014 for the director's cut. New commentary by film historian Paul... You know what? I gotta get... When can I be a film historian? When do I qualify to be a film historian? Because, like, I mean, a lot of hours. How does one get paid above middle class to be a film historian? I want this job. New commentary by film historian Paul M. Salmon. New commentary by fans Christopher Griffiths, Gary Smart, and Eastwood Allen. Some featurettes, The Future of Law... Listen to all these fucking featurettes, dude. Like I said, I think I made it to all of them with the exception of the Easter eggs and deleted scenes. But The Future of Law Enforcement, Creating RoboCop, a newly filmed interview with co-writer Michael Meyer. Robotalk, a newly filmed conversation between co-writer Ed Neumeier and filmmakers David Burke and Nicholas McCarthy. Truth of Character, a newly filmed interview with star Nancy Allen as her role as Lewis. Casting Old Detroit, a newly filmed interview with casting director Julie Seltzer on how the film's ensemble cast was assembled. You know, as aforementioned, for as many, there's 10 people that are of note in this that you remember. If you're not a cinephile, I cannot stress to you just how hard that is. This is not a TV show. This is not a war epic. This is, you know what I'm saying? Like, it is very hard to have that many characters making a significant impact on the film. So, again, if you haven't seen Robocop yet, I spoiled nothing for you for the most part. Anyway. Featurette Connecting the Shots, a newly filmed interview with second unit director and frequent Verhoeven collaborator Mark Goldblatt. Analog, a new featurette focusing on the special photographic effects, including new interviews with Peter Curran and Kevin Kuchever. More Than a Man, composing Robocop, a new tribute to composer Basil Polidorus. I love his score. Yeah, I love his score. I nailed it. Unless there's people that are huge fans of this and be like, I just turned you off when you fucking said that, or when you fucking did that. New tribute to composer Basil Polidorus, featuring film music experts Jeff Bond, Lucas Kendall, Daniel Schweiger, and Robert Townsend. Roboprops, a newly filmed tour of superfan Julian... I didn't watch this one. Superfan Julian Dumont's collection of original props and memorabilia. And I know why I didn't watch that one, because I would just be mad that I didn't have the shit, nor the room for the shit. And if I did have the room, would I actually have that shit? No, probably not. But a 2012 Q&A with the filmmakers, a panel discussion featuring Verhoeven, Davidson, Neumeier, Miner, Allen, and star Peter Weller, which I thought was great. Peter Weller and animator Phil Tippett. And we are not getting out of here without talking about Rob Bottin real quick. Rob Bottin is one of the best makeup designers. You know, I think his name should be mentioned right along there with Stan Winston and you name it. Savini, Baker. The Rob Bottin is a goddamn legend, if you ask me. Robocop creating a legend, villains of old Detroit, special effects, then and now, 3 archive featurettes from 2007 featuring interviews with the cast and crew. Paul Verhoeven's Easter eggs, 4 deleted scenes. The Boardroom, storyboard with commentary Phil Tippett. That was really cool, actually, especially if you're a wannabe writer like yours truly. Anytime that Arrow gives you the storyboards, you gotta take a look, because I mean, the ideas are always flowing, baby. Ideas are always flowing. Director's cut, production footage, raw dailies from the filming of the unrated gore scenes, 2 theatrical trailers, and 3 TV spots. Disc 2, more commentaries, gang. Fucking more commentaries. Archival commentary by director Paul Verhoeven, executive producer. 2 isolated score tracks, composer's original score and the final theatrical mix. The edited for television version of the film, featuring alternate dubs. Yeah, that was pretty funny. Takes and edits of several scenes. It's only 95 minutes. Split. Oh yeah, I did watch this one too. Split screen comparisons between the director's cut and the theatrical cut, and the edited for TV version. Also, a featurette, Robocop, edited for television, a compilation of alternate scenes from 2 edited for television versions, including outtakes newly transferred in HD from recently unearthed 35 millimeter elements. And obviously, as you know, Robocop was popular enough to have 2 more, 3 more if you count the reboot. I never saw the reboot. I found out that it was rated PG-13, and I said, not on your life. Not on your fucking life am I going to. Same with Total Recall, the remake. Didn't Robocop and Total Recall, the remakes, come out about the same time? I'm pretty sure. And I was just so annoyed because both of them, Robocop way more so than Total Recall, but hard R's. Hard R ratings. And I just blown away. that they remade it into this. And not, you know, in the older I get, you have to give credit for the creativity. Like, I understand that they kind of wanted to update the world of Robocop and make it much more futuristic, whereas you know, the OG Robocop is very gritty, very fucking raw, and like you can almost smell the alleyways of old Detroit. You know, like it looks and feels the part. Whereas the reboot, it is just this futuristic, like lasers, and nobody's getting shot in the dick, and there's no man going, "Help me," and his skin is melting. There's none of that. And if there is none of that, or I'm not saying you have to do the same goddamn movie. I'm not saying that at all, gang. But I am saying that if you are going to do a reboot of some sort, more often than not, at least stick with the tone. At least stick with that gritty, rough tone. I'm tired of this thing like, not always should you reboot something for the new generation if they're not going to get it. You know what I'm saying? Or I shouldn't even say that, because then that sounds like I'm insulting the younger generation. I'm not. If they don't care, if they don't fucking care, then like why would you go about and do it? And for the most part, film fans are relatively the same. I think there's a little bit more. I think, you know, people in their 20s watch a little bit more animation than, say, you know, adults of 20, 30, 40 years ago. But for the most part, audiences are the same. The only genre, I think, in a lot of ways that took a hit was the horror genre. It's still popular, but in the circles that I run in the circles that my circles run in, horror films and blood, forget I said horror, blood and guts and scares, they can't stand. It's mind-blowing to me. Like, I always thought, like me and my friends, we would, when I was growing up, Friday nights, like, we'd get a group of us and we'd go see a shitty horror film in the theater, you know, from time to time. And now you mention a horror film to, you know, 23, 24-year-old, they poo-poo it. They poo-poo it right out of the jump. And which sucks for me, because when I do my screenings at the local theater around here, I don't know, like, I would prefer to show more horror films, because I just think that that's what brings us together. Like, we become a group, we'll fight the bad. This whole theater, will kick evil's ass. All right, enough. Arrow Video release fucking goddamn top notch, and Robocop is easily one of my favorite films. Top 50, 100. Thereabouts. Directed by Paul Verhoeven, written by Edward Neumeier, Michael Miner, not Mikey. Starring Peter Weller, Nancy Allen, Daniel Hurley, Ronny Cox, Kurtwood Smith, Miguel Ferrer, and more. Arrow Video always seems to impress. Always. Ellis Cinema. The marathon continues. How we go?